En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento, sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento, sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento.
These notes are about Sicily. Sicily has this marriage of a beautiful sea and this very strong, powerful, almost obdurate earth that often seems semi-arid and desert-like, but at the same time is immensely productive through hard work. And indeed, Sicilians have been working this land very hard for millennia. It's an amazing place. It has layers and layers of history to it. The ancient Greeks were here, the French, the Spanish, Arabs were here, Normans were here, and you see in the faces of people in Sicily traces of all these various peoples. And underneath these layers are other things that Sicilian writers have spoken about, especially Leonardo Sciascia in his fiction.
Leonardo Sciascia, the man I was thinking about when I was there in Etna National Park, is seen here in an Italian television interview. He was a beloved figure in Italy, and for many people, the quintessential Sicilian. In his books, there's a vision that is at once mordant, ironic, critical, funny, skeptical, tragic, and mournful. Here is Leonardo Sciascia talking about his favorite writer, the novelist Flaubert, who devoted great detail to the description of an absurdly complicated hat worn by the character Charles Bouverie, when under the complex hat lay a deep stupidity.
Ora, molte delle cose complicate dei nostri giorni sono complicate in questo senso, nel senso della stupidità. Bisogna semplificare.
Seeing under or behind a complicated hat isn't easy in any culture, and certainly not in Sicily when you're only going there as a tourist for a few weeks. This is a picture of me, Marilynn, Gillies, and Aldo Vesnaver in the city of Trapani on Sicily's northwest coast. We just come from Sardinia, and this Pimento report is the story of our brief trip in Sicily. Now, Leonardo Sciascia was talking about Italian politics when he used that ironic metaphor of a complicated hat and what really lies beneath it. We three were trying very quickly to look under the hat, and indeed, Sicily was full of surprises. This Pimento report is about some of those surprises. Here's an example. One morning, I was walking up to the top of a well-known place in the center of the island, Piazza Armerina, and I went up to the cathedral at the top of the town. There a round-faced, elderly priest, a great friend of the poorer kids in the neighborhood it seemed, told me to go inside, see the church, see the cathedral painted in white and blue, the colors of Sicily. I took in the cathedral, went by the adjacent government office, then I turned at an angle, a right angle down a street, and suddenly saw this sign. On the 22nd of October, 1930, Giorgio Boris Giuliano was born here in this house, head of the mobile squad of Palermo, killed by the mafia, 21 July 1979, for defending the ideals of justice and freedom. Piazza Armerina, 22 October 2010. Marilynn, Aldo Vesnaver, and I did not begin our trip through Sicily at Piazza Armerina. We went down the west coast from Trapani to a city called Sciacca, and then across the middle of the island through Piazza Armerina and up to the area of Mount Etna on the east side of Sicily. It was a sort of U-shaped itinerary. We began at Trapani and its environs. Southeast of Trapani, there's a very famous hilltop town called Erice, overlooking the Gulf of Barnard to the north. Erice was our first surprise. It was called Erice in ancient Greek, but the original founders of the place some 3,000 years ago were not Greeks. They were the very surprising and mysterious Elymians, one of the indigenous peoples of Sicily. No one knows much about them, though they used Greek to write down their language. They were obviously clever and strong as they maneuvered to survive the geopolitics of their time. In that ancient world, Erice was famous throughout the Mediterranean for a religious cult devoted to a love goddess who came to be known as Eraclea Ridens, Laughing Venus, the laughing goddess of Erice. You are now looking at a statue found near the summit of Erice. Is this Venus or some other ancient love goddess? In his essay, Sea and Sardinia, the English writer D.H. Lawrence described a boat trip in the early 1920s to Trapani, and he looked up at Erice, up above him, and he thought of the ancient power of the place. But why in the name of heaven should my heart stand still as I watch that hill which rises above the sea? It is the Etna of the West, but only a town-crowned hill. To men it must have had a magic almost greater than Etna's, the world mystery, the smiling Astarte. This one of the world centers older than old, and the woman goddess watching Africa, Eraclea Ridens, laughing, the woman goddess at this center of an ancient, quite lost world. From Erice, Marilynn, Aldo, and I went to a place called Segesta, another very famous site in Sicily. Looking at the ancient Doric temple there and the surrounding landscape, I felt that I'd never seen as beautiful a location in which to situate a city. And this place, like Erice, was not Greek, but the creation of the Elymian people. There is a beautiful gorge behind the temple, and to the east of it and above, Mount Barbaro, where the Elymians placed their Acropolis or upper city. And just adjacent, the breathtaking amphitheatre looking out on Mount Abatello across the valley below. The top of the Acropolis, or the upper city, looking west. The Acropolis and the amphitheatre were built, reshaped during the Roman period, when Rome was the dominant power. But there's an interesting sidelight here. The Romans had this myth about themselves that they came from Asia Minor, from Troy, and they saw in the people of Segesta, the Elymians or Elymians, the real thing. They viewed the Elymians as Asian, as coming from Asia Minor, and so they saw an affiliation between themselves, the Romans, and the people of Segesta, and they gave the city a kind of free status or immunity within the Roman Empire. The Romans recognized the difference of the Elymians. The temple was constructed in such a way that the rising sun in the east would come and strike the front of the temple, and it would be brilliant in the morning sunshine, with the sound of crickets or cicadas in the background. The temple was left unfinished around 420 BC, the work most likely of an Athenian architect brought to Sicily by the Elymians. And even in this incomplete state, it is one of the finest examples of Doric architecture anywhere in the world. In both Erice and Segesta, you feel the presence of a people who liked to build their cities very high up on mountains and who had an enormous sense of both nature and strategic planning. You feel a presence that is different and distinct, and I would say, in my near total ignorance, Sicilian. From Segesta, Marilynn, Aldo, and I went to the west coast of Sicily to a place called Eraclea, Minoa. This promontory, looking out on the sea, was also a stunning place, but the ancient city here was not Elymian. It was Greek and lived in tension with Segesta and the Elymian population there.
This view is from the promontory of Eraclea. And there we're looking out at what Homer called the wine-dark sea. The view in the rain, the very beginning of October 2014. This is the view from just above the amphitheater at Eraclea. Aldo, what do you think of this? We're standing here in the rain.
Actually, it's quite nice in the rain.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly very nice. Luckily, it's not raining more, but with this light rain, it gives a different sense of it completely. Very nice. I enjoy it.
Aldo, Marilynn, and I left Eraclea, Minoa, and went east to the other coast of Sicily, to a place called Sant'Alfio on the flank of Mount Etna. There we saw the 100-horse chestnut, a tree that is approximately 3,000 years old, making it one of the oldest in all of Europe. This tree is a sort of symbol. When we were in Sicily, when I was there, I didn't interview people, I didn't intervene or interfere. Instead, I tried to intuit a kind of feeling from the presence of places, such as the Museo della Vite e del Vino in Sant'Alfio, the Museum of the Vine and of Wine, which is very near Mount Etna. People in the museum were welcoming, and upstairs you can see representations of traditional rural Sicilian life, a young worker of the land, a family bedroom typical of a small house, a sewing area for the making of clothes. Downstairs in the museum are children's drawings done by children for their class in elementary school, drawings of the famous 100-horse chestnut tree. Above Sant'Alfio is Mount Etna. Austere at its summit, beautifully rich and fertile in the volcanic soil down at its lower part. Marilynn, Aldo, and I went up Etna. So here we are. Marilynn has once again got me in one hell of a situation. I'm in a funicular going up the side of one of the most powerful volcanoes in the world, Mount Etna, worshipped by the ancients. You can hear what the funicular is like. We just went over a little thing. So, my dear, what do you think?
But I'm very glad we're doing it. I think
Yeah.
I'm especially glad we're going to the very top where we see the big craters. Apparently the little craters and fissures are the most dangerous. Oh, but it's all black around here. Lava, lava, lava everywhere.
Now, the ancients worshipped this volcano. Do you think modern people, in any sense of the word, still have the sense of awe that people long ago did?
Well, I would not, personally, I would not be worshipping it. I'd be careful about it, and I wouldn't want to be fooling around on it. If it's about to erupt.
I feel you can feel its power. Like this is, oh yes, this is a big creature that we're on here.
What do you think, Aldo? Big creature?
I think that humanity, anybody doesn't worship, but has great respect for anything of great power.
Yeah, for nature, sort of.
Yeah. And it is very beautiful in an awesome way, isn't it? I think, anyway.
It is. There's something very stark about it.
Yeah.
Now we're getting up high. There's nothing growing here. It's all just lava. But look at now we're.
There are little
But little
tufts of-
spots. What is that? With that
There are
that
tufts of grasses, yeah.
Yeah, there are things that can grow up here. Well, my friends, auguri.
Auguri anche.
Yeah, grazie. Top of Etna. just below its summit. The guides are not coming up today, so we're up here on our own. There are other people climbing. There's Marilynn. What you see here is a recent lava flow off of Etna.
Because of poor visibility on the day that we were there, the guides at Etna were not going beyond a certain point. Marilynn did not want to continue when she felt uncertain, and I stayed with her. Aldo continued to the very summit, and Marilynn and I looked at the region just below.
Here is gas continuing to come from the source of an eruption more than 10 years ago.
This impressive cavity is a still active legacy of an eruption in 2003-2004, an upheaval that wiped away an elevator lift and a whole recreation area, leaving behind a 200-meter by 800-meter extrusion that had not been there before.
Here we have a good view of a relatively recent lava flow.
The lava flow a decade ago traveled at 300 to 400 meters per hour. That was a speed that allowed people to get out of its way. The three of us came down from Etna, and the next day we went to the northern flank of the Etna complex in the national park. There lies a beautiful upland area where we saw many things, such as a dung beetle rolling his tightly coiled ball and preparing to bury it. Mushroom pickers who told Aldo that they were in search of the porcino mushroom. Horses eating and moving about with a beautiful freedom of their own. After Etna, Aldo left us, and Marilynn and I went on to Palermo, and that city will be the focus of another Pimento report in the new year, 2015. For the time being, like the children whose paintings are in the museum at Sant'Alfio, let's think of the 100-horse chestnut tree, old, rooted, strong, and enduring. This is Patrick Barnard for the Pimento Report saying goodbye for now.
En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento.